Welcome to the Woman Up podcast. My name is Natasha DG, and today our guest is Keely Woolley, a #1 best-selling author and award-winning leadership mentor, trainer, and coach. She's inspiring female executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs to bounce back from burnout without compromising their dreams or career. Keely, welcome to Woman Up.
And thank you, and welcome. Welcome to everybody else, and thank you for inviting me on the show.
For people who do not know you, can you please introduce yourself and give us a brief overview of your coaching journey and how you came up to specialize in helping female executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs?
In fact, actually, it took me nearly 50 years to realise that the people pleaser in me is not a positive trait to have. And why do I say that? So I was in the corporate environment for over 23 years. I was very successful. I was in an executive role. I was program director. And then up until, let's just say I was strategically made redundant in December. It was January 2020. And it was a really tough time. I mean, I actually created the role for which I actually got made redundant from. Ironically, they thought it was a fantastic idea, and then they recruited someone externally. So that was a bit of a shock to the system. But I also had to put my entire team at risk, and I thought that when they put me at risk, that it was the redundancy that caused my burnout. I basically mentally and physically shut down, when in fact it was actually a catalyst for a whole host of things that had gone on over the 20 odd years within that corporate environment. It was predominantly a male environment. My leadership team, there was 13 of us and there was 12 men. And the board above me was effectively what I would say white, male, Oxford, so it was very much in that. So in a manufacturing environment and a male environment that was, a global company, you start as a female, you start falling into the traps of trying to be like a man. You think that's the way that you're going to get by, which then you then start feeling like an imposter because you don't know how you're getting in the roles that you're in. You start trying to prove yourself, so you're volunteering for things. I also fell into the role. I didn't specifically pick it. So although I was very, very successful and clearly, business improvements and program director, it's something I was really good at, but it wasn't something I personally chose. But I didn't know until now, I didn't know what I actually love. And with the whole people pleasing stuff as well, when I was going through my journey of recovery, the one thing that did keep on cropping up is that I was always trying to keep everybody happy. Putting a mask on my face, trying to smiling all the time, nothing to see here, everything's fine, and move on. I was sort of putting an oxygen mask on everybody else rather than myself. And the problem with that is that you're not re-energizing, you're not being kind to yourself, you're not setting boundaries, and all of those kinds of things. So it's a whole host of things that had built up over 23 years. And it wasn't until I went through my own journey of recovery that I realised all of the traps that I'd fallen into that I now teach other people not to fall into effectively. So,
wow, I can relate in being the woman that's trying to go after and trying to be like a man and tackling and going after my goals like a man with the energy, the masculine energy, if I could say it like that.
Yeah.
But interestingly, can you tell us what exactly is burnout and how it can manifest differently in context of female executives?
Yeah, and that's a very interesting point because one of the challenges I have within my business is that when you're trying to reach your target audience, you have to actually tell them, say what they think they want rather than what they actually need. And it's not until I start actually talking to them that they go, yeah, actually, this is the problem. And I, as someone that was in that environment, I'm going around 1,000 miles an hour. I'm spinning plates. I'm not sleeping properly at night. And you're thinking that your most creative time is at night time because you're getting all these ideas when it's not. It's your brain is going 1,000 miles an hour and you're not shutting down because
Mm,
you're not taking time out for yourself during the day, even if it's just step away for 5 minutes, each hour, just time to sort of reconnect with yourself, refocus and clear your mind. And when you've done that, it gives you the space during a day to actually achieve something in that would take maybe 15, 20 minutes, as opposed to at night time when your brain's going at 1,000 miles an hour and it takes you an hour and a half. So you're not actually achieving anything from it. And then there's other things that start manifesting that we don't listen to because we don't listen to our bodies.
right.
Where we are going at 1,000 miles an hour, we're doing this, we're doing that, fixing everybody, being the mum, being the wife, being the executive, being this, being that. Even with founders and entrepreneurs and coaches, the same thing is just that 5 more minutes, just that 5 more minutes. And we all know it's not just 5 minutes, it's
Yeah,
another evening wasted or weekend wasted. And that's
right.
when you start getting the increased headaches, the brain fog, memory loss, things like rashes, gut problems, self-sabotage where we're eating and drinking poorly, maybe eating junk food or drinking too much alcohol, or people go to substance abuse, or they get things like aching joints, their arms ache, their neck aches, and women tend to carry a lot of the stress in their neck that
Me too.
then spreads down their arms, which is why their arms, they start getting, where you get all of the wrist problems, or you can't reach out to hold something, the grip gets lost. So it's all of those things start manifesting because they're all in at different times over different periods. You don't recognize them. And then suddenly, boom, like a balloon, it just pops. And then you then go and you spiral out of control. And if you're lucky, you can get out like I did. But then there are those that can't get out of it at all. And I mean, as I say, I was lucky. But I mean, first of all, I couldn't talk to my family and friends. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't function and all those. And that's why it's so important to prevent rather than try to correct. But if you can correct it, even better as well. So,
Wow. Um, in your experience, what are some unique challenges that female executives, obviously, face that can contribute to burnout?
I'd say one of the biggest things is that, quite often women feel like they're not being heard. Um, Unfortunately, scientifically, they've proven that because of our tonality, men don't always, they're literally not hearing what you're saying. And I've had it many occasions where I've been in a meeting room, I've had this fantastic idea, real inspiration. I'm in a program director, I'm going to be that kind of person, strategic thinking. And I used to say these ideas and I'd get blank looks. So I'd explain it in another way, I'd get a blank look. I'd write it on a board, blank look. I'd draw a picture. All of those kind of things, any way to get it across. And in the end, I'd go, all right, I'm wasting my time, complete waste of my time. And then the guy next to me would say, do you know what? I've got a really good idea. And he almost verbatim used to repeat what it was that I just said. And they'd go, that's a great idea. And I'm like,
What?
what? And the problem is that this is where women need to, you need to recognize these things, is that I reacted to this situation and came across emotional, which then they'd go, oh, there she goes again, getting emotional. Instead of learning to respond to that situation and manage it in a much better way. And one of the best things that I learned, sadly too late, and I wish I'd learned it now, is being able to turn to that person saying, do you know what, Martin? Thank you ever so much for being able to explain to them what I've been trying to say for the last half an hour. So in that time, you're thanking them and recognising them. So they're still getting a bit of an ego stroke. But at the same time, you're highlighting that actually this was my idea. so you're still getting that recognition. So it's learning that sort of tools and strategies to do that. And then, the other things is that as a female, quite often you're not, as I call it, in the boys' club, and it's not intentional. It's the fact that they're talking about their football, their golf, the racing cars, what they did at the weekend, the boys' club activities.
Right.
And they end up being able to connect with other people because being, within a corporate environment, even as an entrepreneur, when you're in that situation where you haven't got the connections, and they're so powerful, they link you up to opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't get. And it makes it easier if guys know, I know Steve. Steve would be really good in this role. But if you're not front of face to people, they're not thinking of you. So you're less likely. So that's why you end up trying to work harder to prove yourself and those kind of things. And you fall into these traps. And there are other ways that you can achieve it. Plus, women don't take as many risks.
Right.
They've proven that men will take more risks. If there's a job application, and on there, 55% of it, the men will still apply for the job. Women will not apply for a job unless they've got, I think it's over 87% of the criteria on there. So we reduce our opportunities.
Right.
So we then get frustrated. And then we get frustrated because we don't get the same opportunities as other people. So we are our own worst enemy because we create some of the situations. We have more limiting beliefs about ourselves. And don't get me wrong, I know men do have that, but quite often for different reasons and the lack of confidence that goes with it. So when you are trying to prove yourself, one of the other things is that when you're trying to prove yourself, you volunteer for everything. Doesn't matter whether it's something that's your strength or not, you volunteer for everything. So you're getting tired and burnt out. All of the men are sitting back. And my crew used to do it. They used to sit back with their arms crossed and go, that's right, don't worry, Keely's going to volunteer in a minute. So they didn't need to. And, the best thing I would invite other women to do is that, don't sit back. Wait until somebody else in the room has volunteered. And if it is something specifically that you're capable of doing, then volunteer for it. And then people will recognise you because you're delivering something that's going to be really well, excellent. And you get more strategic opportunities. If you're taking all of the odd jobs here and there and overloading yourself, you haven't got the space to be able to deliver on the big strategic jobs where you're going to get recognised.
I wanted to ask you about balancing ambitions and well-being. Many female leaders are driven by ambitions. I know you work with them. How can they pursue their dreams and ambitions without compromising their well-being? That's in your palette.
So that's an interesting point. One of the things as well, what I look at is, as well as the being able to learn to reset, and that taking time out. So there's a few things I would say immediately. We are tied to this.
Yes.
Tied to it. The first thing many people do, and not just women, is that they get up in the morning and that's the first thing they do is they pick up the phone. And quite often whilst they're in bed. So they scan on their phone and they're looking at emails, they're looking at messages, they're looking at what's online, social media and all that. Immediately that they do that, they're already setting themselves up to feeling stressed and tense and anxious and all those kind of things. Someone sent an email and they don't really like the language of the email and they're already frustrated. So they start their day on a negative.
Right.
So, the first thing I would say, don't have your mobile phone next to you unless it's for your alarm. Turn off all your notifications. And the only reason you touch your phone is to turn off the alarm. Go and have your shower, your coffee, do whatever it is that you need to do. And one of the other things I do recommend to everybody is that first thing in the morning is that we need to have at least 20 seconds of sunlight, at least first thing, to make sure that we can balance out our circadian rhythm. It will help us with our sleep at night time. Because if we don't have a good sleep at night, it will impact everything. Because it's the most understated subject in the world, the least spoken about, but the most important thing we can do is sleep properly at night. because without it, it affects everything. So
Sure.
that will help on a performance side of it. Then obviously when you're not touching the technology all the time, maybe I mean, what I do is I separate. I've got folders on my phone where it's some for business, some for social, some for family, and I set notifications off where I don't need them, so I'm not being disrupted. All of those kind of things, which then helps you to be more centered and balanced. You have more energy to focus on what is right. The other things that I would say is that, start checking in with yourself and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing some of your key drivers for stress. What are the things that maybe, as one of the ladies that I work with, is that she goes through, she's go to DEFCON 9 in 0 to 60 seconds because she's not taking time to just stop and breathe and think logically rather than, as I describe it, as the emotional monkey, that emotional
Mm-hmm.
monkey that kicks in. And
Right.
then when we react to a situation, we come across emotional, and we're not showing up as a leader that people will follow and respect. What they see him as this emotional monkey that reacts to different situations. Whereas when you understand some of your drivers, it could be an individual, it could be a group, it might be standing on presenting on a stage. When you're going through roles as leadership, being able to speak on a platform is absolutely fundamental. And if that's something that causes you lots of anxiety and stress, the build up to it is going to cause you problems. When you're delivering, it's going to cause you problems. And afterwards, it's going to cause you problems. So if you can find other ways of managing it, because you know that it's something, whether it's going to, say, speaker training, learning how to speak on a platform, and do that. But one of the things I would say is, until you know what causes you stress and you create awareness of it, you can't do anything about it. And the other pillar I say that's really important is this whole reflect, that introspection, because as you've mentioned, many of our challenges is because of our program patterns of behavior.
Mm.
And it could be your parenting, your schools, your peers, your leaders, everything, like culture, religion. It has such an influence on the way in which we perceive ourselves. And that's what causes our limiting beliefs, the self-doubt. We don't have the self-love, the self-compassion, self-confidence, and all of those things are the things that help you to show up as the leader you are. It's like almost like your head goes up, your shoulders go back, your whole demeanor changes and you shine as you walk into a room, and people think, you know what? That's the kind of person that I want to be around. That's the kind of leader that I want to have in front of me, because that they're oozing with that charisma. And how many times have you had it when you've been into a party or event or something like that? And it doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter whether they're tall, small, thin, fat, whatever, maybe not the most attractive person in the world, but that person stands out like a sore thumb
Exactly.
because they've got that energy, that charisma, and everything like that. And you're like, wow, I want to be that person. And that's what helps is when you have that introspection and you look deep. So yeah, long answer, but
It's so amazing that what you just said about charisma, and it's something that I really want to teach women to either work on it and put forward. We talked about like all the you gave strategies when around awareness of how we can prevent, but sometimes I think most of the time we go like when it's not too late, but when we're right in the challenge. So let's talk about resilience. Could you share some key strategies or practices that can aid in building resilience and recovering from burnout?
Mm. I mean, I've said it a couple of times, and one of the biggest things is learning to stop and learning to breathe. And when I say breathe, I mean breathe where, around your solar plexus. And breathe 4 to 5 seconds and learning to hold it. And then when you release it, slowly, sort of 6 seconds, and then holding it again for about 4 seconds. And doing that, even if it's for 2 to 3 minutes, just that stopping gives you time to refocus, get some clarity, and be able to think from that logical space. Absolutely fundamental. The other thing is we don't connect enough with nature. I don't, are you familiar with the phrasing of grounding or earthing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that is, going outside, going on the walks or doing some gardening or, being amongst trees and birds and all those kind of things. It gives you an opportunity to re-energize. And one of my pillars is about re-energizing, learning the art of gratitude, because one of the things that we are not good at is actually being grateful for what we have achieved. We're really good at recognizing other people, but not
Yes.
recognizing our own success. We're just moving on. And I say is to stop racing towards your end goal. Enjoy the journey. Be present here, now, and in the moment. Because when you're present here, now, and in the moment, you see things that you haven't seen around you, whether it is the color of something or the smell of something or anything like that, having that intention. Instead of having 1,000 goals to achieve and creating the overwhelm, only set yourself so many tasks each day to achieve, so you can then say, do you know what? I've had a really positive day today. But when you have a list of 10 items and you don't finish them off, at the end of the day, you're frustrated because you haven't finished the 10 items. Be kind to yourself. So cut yourself some slack.
Right.
Have some imperfect perfection. Instead of striving for perfection, imperfect perfection, but take action. Because when you take action, you start delivering and you start improving. And each time you start improving, then that makes you feel better about yourself rather than never actually taking action and keep them going, I've got to have this better, I've got to have this better, I've got to have this better, because nothing happens. And the only way you can improve yourself is by taking action, getting feedback, and then improving, getting feedback, getting improving, and you just so on and so forth. So, there's so many tools and strategies. Learning, I do yoga. I make sure I put that in my diary so no one else can block it out. The meditation in the morning, absolutely invaluable. Just that 10 minutes being able to reset and just taking time. Stop. I cannot say that enough. Learn to stop and set some personal boundaries. The power of saying no. We are so worried about what other people will think. We've been programmed as a child that if we don't say yes or if we don't agree to do something, then we're not very nice. We're being unkind and all those kind of things, And we've got to learn that it is okay to say no. And when we do say no, it's actually really empowering and people start to respect you more. Definitely. Because you set those boundaries and you're teaching your children boundaries as well. Because if you've got children and you're always saying yes to them, then you're not teaching them the importance of boundary setting. And then you're leading them down that path as well. So there's so many things.
Definitely. That's very interesting because I think we're built to be nurturers and givers and all that good stuff. So I can only imagine the importance of giving that education to our kids. I wanted to ask you, my last question to you is, what one mindset shift that helped your client regain control over their careers?
Learning to be vulnerable. And what do I mean by that? Yeah. And it is creating that environment space of trust. It's not I trust you. It's I'm also trusting everybody around me to give me a safe space that when I say that I actually need some help, I'm struggling at the moment. And it could be on a personal level, it could be on a professional level. But when you're able to be open and honest with people, it also teaches them the art of being open and honest. And if I give you an example, one of the ladies that I was working with last year, she used to work about 70 hours a week. Now, are you familiar with the phrase secondary gain?
More or
So, what
less.
secondary gain means is that quite often the problem that you think you need to solve is not the real problem. There's something else going on behind it. And that could be the self-sabotage I was talking about. So whether it's eating junk food or, I mean, I quite often see it as that you see it, especially on the American films where they've got a tub of ice cream, and when the proverbial hits the fan, they go and reach for the ice cream. But in this case, this woman, she was working the 70 hours because she didn't want to face a personal issue that was going on in her life, because she was scared of what would actually happen by being open with it. As soon as she sat down with a member of her family and they talked about what was going on, and it was actually it was more associated to the other person than her, but as soon as they faced it, that openness opened up a whole new door. It created that vulnerability with them. She then started being vulnerable with her team members, and her team members started sharing her some of their fears, some of their challenges, some of the things that was going on in life. And she said, and there were some tears in that morning. And she said but it was the most magical, beautiful moment being able to have that. She now doesn't work the 70 hours. She's doing a normal 40-hour week. She's trusting her team to be able to get on and do what she was taking. I mean, she was like taking everything because, she was worried about other things that was going on. And it released her up to be able to focus on the strategy of her business and concentrate on new ideas rather than being in the business and doing stuff that she didn't need to be doing. And on top of that, it's also improved her relationship with her colleagues, her family, her friends, because she's got that vulnerability and space of trust. And it's so beautiful when you get the courage to do it.
I love it. Here's my last question quickly, Keely. I wanted to ask you, what is your legacy? What do you want to be remembered for?
My mission in life is to see the light shine in at least one female's eyes every single day when they have that eureka moment, and they're able to shift the way that they're feeling, and they can go on a path of fulfillment and success. So I had it on the weekend. There was a lady there, and she kept on, I was trying to get to grips with her story. She's going, well, I don't know this, I don't know. I said, look, why do you do what you do? And she came up with all these answers. And I said, no, why do you do what you're doing? And she came up with all of these answers again. She wasn't answering a question. I said, no, I'm going to ask you again. Why do you do the job, the business that you're doing? Why is it so important to you? And then suddenly she went, and she shifted. And I'm not going to lie, she did end up in tears. And I went, there you go. Right. And that release. And she had like 15 years of stuff that she'd been holding in and containing within herself. And in that moment, she released it.
Keely, what is your legacy and what do you want to be remembered for?
Right. So for me, I love nothing more than seeing the light shine in at least one lady's eyes when they have that eureka moment, and being a part of their journey when they turn it into reality. And the reason why I love that is that it gives me a real glowing, warm heart feeling. And if you've helped to change someone's life, being able to move them forwards, it not only impacts their lives, it impacts other people around them. It has a positive knock-on effect. So, for me to be remembered for that, being a helping to change other people's lives, then that's a wonderful thing to me. And obviously, I mean, I have a grandson, and if he can go on a journey where he starts from a place where he doesn't fall into a lot of the traps that we often fall into, then I mean, what's not to love about that, So,
Love it. I like that. I want to thank you so much once again, Keely, for your time and for joining the podcast. You've delivered valuable content, and I'm hoping that I can have you back on the show eventually if the time is on our side.
Yeah. Yes. And thank you for getting up so early for me.
Don't worry about it. You're all forgiven.
So I would love to. It's a pleasure. I mean, any way that you can provide some tools and strategies for others to be able to, I mean, why can't women be more successful? But in a healthier way. Right. So, and I'm going to leave you with this little point of fact. Yes, okay. Please. So, one of the things that I'm so passionate about this, why it's so important, is that according to the World Economic Forum, the gender bias gap is going to take 62 years to close in Northern Europe, 70 years in the rest of Europe, and 160 years in North America. So-called mature, advanced countries. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not prepared to wait for that. So the only way we can make a difference is by us stepping up and making a difference.
You are listening to the Woman Up podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please hit the follow button, share it on social media so we can send you a shout out. To get information on public speaking coaching with Natasha DG, reach out by email at contact@natashadg.com or by phone 514-558-5777. Thanks again, and I'll see you on next one. Until then, woman up.